It's a pleasure again to be joined by my pal, Jerry Beach, who is somewhere on Long Island covering what seems like every sport that moves these days. And some of the ones, yeah,
sorry,
some of the ones that aren't moving,
yeah,
or that we hope would move a lot faster than they currently are. And my friend, I wanted to dive in on baseball because you cover the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the Cubs. I'm in suburban Chicago. You're in Long Island. And both of us, I think, have fan bases that are really wondering, just like everybody else is wondering, are we going to see baseball on time? Are we going to see baseball sometime in May? Are we going to see baseball at all this year? So what's the latest on the negotiations back and forth?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. It's always enjoyed chatting with you. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, and ended up watching our chat from it was June 2020, and it's hard to believe that this stuff is still going on.
Yeah, and back then, sorry to interrupt, but back then the question was, there's a pandemic going on, and we talked about college basketball, and it all got shuttered.
Yep.
And then the question was, are we going to see baseball at all? And you said, yeah, you were pretty confident that we would see baseball in some way, shape, or form, if I remember correctly.
Yep, I think so.
And we ended up, with a 60-game schedule then?
Yeah, 60 games, yeah.
Yeah, but is there a chance that we'll have that small a schedule this season?
It all ties together, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, there's a chance. I'm famously pessimistic about a lot of things, and for years, this what we're in right now has felt unavoidable. Players were mad with that CBA almost from the moment the ink dried, and I think it was end of 16. Yeah, end of 16 was a 5-year deal. And the thing that's interesting to me is that, a lot of attention is paid to, before the lockout, $18 billion, whatever it was signed in free agent contracts. And then players are also concerned with the minimum salary and making sure players get promoted on time without regard to service time issues, going back to the Chris Bryant thing from I think it was 15. But to me, the interesting thing is, I remember talking about guys about this 2018 or 19, was the middle class. And of course, the middle class is we need context in that, because you and I are middle class. There's probably not, the middle class in MLB is doing pretty well for itself, but it is being squeezed out. We see it every year. You'll see, player X is a pretty good guy. How is he not signed yet? How is he going to spring training without a deal? Or, player Y is really good. How is he in camp on a minor league deal signed on March 15th? So, and I guess, again, if we want to talk about baseball as the American pastime, the top 1% are doing great, and there's always going to be opportunities for the younger minimum salaried players to come up. But what do you do in the middle when you've got 6 or 7 years of service time and you're not a superstar, but you're no longer the affordable $500,000 a year guy? And a ton of guys were telling me, I think it was 19, that when they were free agents, these are 30-something guys, they were telling me that they got the same offers from the same teams at the same day. Team A, B, and C offered them, $550 or $600 on the same day. And these guys were angry about that and feeling like, if it wasn't collusion, is it collusion? That's the big word no one wants to hear since the 80s, right? Or is it that the teams are now all computer model, all very analytically driven? Like, I don't have a copy with me, but in my book, Subway Series, which is out now on Sports Publishing, if I had it, there's a line. Oh, you said you got it? Oh, I thought you were gonna get a drink.
No, I'm reaching for water.
Darn it.
Yeah.
But there's a line in there. I think there's a line in there. If not, it was done in the interviews with Joe Madden, the Cubs manager at the time, saying that back in 20 years ago, that every team had its own identity. There's a Yankee way, a Met way, a Cub way, a Devil Ray way. Now it's kind of like everybody's kind of got their own. Everybody's looking at the same template. So are these guys being squeezed out because everybody's looking at the same template? Is it more sinister? Is it a combo thereof? Nobody really knows. but the players are really angry and they're losing jobs over it. So I'm really curious in this roundabout way of talking about it, where the middle class falls whenever this damn thing gets settled. Is there going to be measures made to try and make sure that and again, I don't want to use any names because I talk to some of these guys, but, player X's, the 32-year-olds who are still pretty good, 260, 25, 80, home 80 RBI guys. Will the CBA ensure that there's still a spot for them? And sometimes I hear about the, negotiations over the minimum salary and making sure that teams aren't tanking and making sure that players, again, going back to like the Chris Bryant thing, the young stars in training get promoted on time and not 3-4 weeks in. I wonder if that's going to end up falling by the wayside, or if battling on behalf of those middle class players will lengthen this lockout. So it's interesting. That's a roundabout way of responding to your question, because you asked about if I think it's going to be baseball this year, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think there will be. Like I said, I'm a pessimist. Like I said, that's where I said I'm a pessimist. I've been a pessimist since this started back in 2016. My thinking, I like to think, as a relatively sane person, hopefully, that MLB is looking at this winter and like nobody gives a that we're not getting ready to play. Super Bowl is this weekend, and usually as you know, it goes Super Bowl, then you see the first great images up here in the cold where we are in Chicago, New York, of Arizona and Florida, and you get ready for 6 weeks of easing into baseball season. Well, like, look at this winter in sports, and nobody's really had a chance to care that MLB isn't around. The NFL had the all-time greatest weekend in history, right, in the divisional round. The championship round was only slightly less exciting. NHL, NBA have going on every night, thankfully, since the last month or so, since the pandemic interruptions. Like, when do the owners realize that nobody notices they're gone?
That's a really good question, and I was thinking a little bit about this morning, and I want to throw something at you. It's almost as if the ESPN factor is really underscoring how little people care about baseball right now. Because I mean, pitchers and catchers normally report what?
Like next week after Valentine's Day. Yeah.
So you've got that, but here's where I'm going with this. First of all, if you go to the front page of ESPN.com, all you see are, well, of course, covering Super Bowl week, but beyond that, it's LeBron. Who's going to get the NBA had its trade deadline yesterday? That's are right, deals happening? Are they not happening? All of that. Then you have the added bonus this year of ESPN.com, which is still one of the most trafficked websites. ESPN.com going from NHL being over here and down here on the tabs to front and center. And they're talking about it because they have a TV deal. And with all of this working in favor of these other sports, then you could argue that the NHL was kind of given the short shrift, and NBC was saying, well, we're getting out of the contract, and they telegraphed that they really didn't care as much. And the pandemic didn't help either. But now you've got a little bit of a mini renaissance. Plus, they have to cost justify their NBA investment, and they've got Monday Night Football and a new deal that's even more expensive, and ABC, ESPN's going to have a Super Bowl, all of that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, people don't care about baseball.
Yeah. And like, if you're our age, you care about baseball. Younger, it's been a challenge for them for a generation, at least, to get younger kids into it. And like, I don't know if you're too far off topic, but like, I don't love the idea of NFL slime time. I don't know if your kids have HBO on Nickelodeon, right. But like, the NFL just goes, like what I don't like about that is like, people get tackled and they're slime. No, somebody might just suffer a concussion. I'm not a big fan of that. But anyway, I don't want to veer too far off. But the point is, the NFL is doing something. And again, when our age, you got into NFL on Monday Night Football. That was a big deal. That doesn't exist. It exists, but there's 1,000 other entertainment options. So the NFL is at least doing something to try and tap into the I guess you call it the tween market or even younger. Like MLB is losing fans. Like, okay, like if you're, again, older people, middle-aged people, whatever, we're into it and we'll come back to it when it comes back. But like the Joe Blow fan, you're losing him or her, and they don't seem to care. They being the owners, not the players. And look, we find out how combative it got in 2020 about the negotiations over the pandemic shortened season. The owners were like, it's not costing us anything to not play. And they could have been, MLB could have been, the first sport back. I think it actually technically might have been. I'm trying to think, the hockey playoffs were like around July 31st, August 1st. I always think of that. My late mom's birthday is August 1st. I know the Islanders played that day. So, but they could have played and that was in a period where the pandemic had eased a little bit for the first time. They could have been playing in late June, right? Early July, instead of the last week in July. So I just, and I remember thinking during 2020, again, everything comes back to that. I wrote something, and you might recall, I don't know if you remember, but 2001, of course, 9/11 happens. And then a month later, Bud Selig is at Capitol Hill talking about contraction. You remember that?
I do, yeah.
And the CBA was expiring, I think actually expired at the end of 2001.
Okay.
6 weeks after the awful terrorist attacks, you can't have a lockout or a strike. So they rolled it back to 2002, and figured out a way to get the first non-work stoppage CBA since what, 72, I think it was. So almost 30 years. So, but there's not that sense of self-awareness now. People, and I hate to say billionaires versus millionaires, but I guess in the bottom line it is, people don't give a what about that anymore. Okay, it's a tough time. It's 2 years of this. 20 years ago, MLB seemed to understand that. Okay, we're just going off this awful thing. Let's not dicker over this. Let's figure out a way to keep going. Now it's like, the owners locked them out, and that's that. It's just concerning because they're losing so much momentum, and they're kind of in quicksand, and they're just like, okay, we're in quicksand. Look at us, we're getting covered up. So I think there'll be baseball this year. I mean, it's hard to conceive of it not being baseball, but what that's going to look like, I don't know. Spring training's next weekend or next week. That's not happening. They can still, have I think they have a few week period where they can dicker a bit and then still have a shortened spring training, get to, I think it's March 31st is opening day. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're looking at, I don't think we're looking at 60 games, but the players are mad. The players are mad, and the owners are entrenched. And, and then we go to, okay, Super Bowl's over this weekend, but, the NBA, college basketball is kicking into high gear. And then after March Madness ends, the hockey and basketball playoffs start. And there's a long window where like, all right, play if you play, don't play. People have things to watch.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you get the possibility, first of all, with more of a focus on women's sports than there used to be.
Right,
you
you
get the possibility, and that the NCAA says, well, we've got two great properties to watch in the spring. We got baseball, we got World Series, we've got softball, we've got a World Series there.
Yep.
Those go into June. That it may end up being a situation where they just won't miss.
Look, we all in 2020, who would have thought, if I'm talking to you 2 years ago right now, hey, listen, you're looking at an entire spring without hockey playoffs, basketball, baseball. You're like, you're crazy. I can't deal with that. And a week into it, you're like, I guess I better figure out a way to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not pandemic cause. This is, self-inflicted wounds by the owners. So it's like, we'll figure out a way to get by.
Well, we baked bread. I mean, we had our own sourdough going back.
Try to redo our rooms and our Zoom rooms, which we didn't even know what existed 2 years ago.
Didn't know what would happen with that. I want to talk a little bit about the this minimum salary thing, because if memory serves, it was like $650 or something, but now they want to bump it up to $1 million.
I don't think it's that high. I'll tell you in a second.
$750, $800.
Yeah, I'll tell you in a second. I don't think it's quite a million yet.
So
It's
and you talk-
570, 500 right now. And the
okay.
players want 775.
Okay.
The league proposed a rise to 615.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is still, to your millionaires versus billionaires issue, this is still a little puzzling for the average person who, and I mentioned off camera that my wife and I just sent, we're part of a season ticket thing, and we just wrote our second check for that. But you start to wonder, okay, wait a minute. And especially, we probably have two different fan bases here, because you've got relatively new ownership with the Mets.
Very new, yep.
And a willingness to spend.
Yep.
And I guess what we're going to call him the best number 2 starter in the game in Scherzer. Yeah. So you've got that, which kind of underscores the fact that, hey, we're in it to win it.
Yep.
And the flip side of that is, I mean, if a team didn't quote unquote tank, I don't know what you can call what the Cubs did last year, but I mean, they just said, see you later to the core that was part of the 2016 championship.
Gosh, just, man, those guys should have had lifetime contracts. I mean, I know Rizzo's probably slowing down a little bit, and Bryant hasn't had a year quite like the MVP year. He was pretty great last year. But man, I don't understand how you what away all that goodwill that you got from winning the championship finally.
Right. And my point to that, though, is you've got an excited fan base in New York, and we've got this is how you're going to treat us, fan base here in Chicago.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny because, first of all, I'm glad I wore this Expos hat. We're talking labor stuff. I'm wearing an Expos hat of all days, right?
Yeah.
The team that should have won the 94 championship. But it's kind of, Mets fans, and I'm sure Cubs fans, maybe before 16, Mets fans have a certain amount of fatalism to them and nihilism. Yep. So they're like, oh yeah, now we got Max Scherzer and we got a real owner, we got a real manager, Buck Showalter. Now, of course, it's not going to be baseball. Of course, all this stuff goes our way and then we don't play. But yeah, the Mets, they had a rough year last year. The stat was they were in first place longer than any sub 500 team in history.
Wow.
I think every day from like early April, mid-April to August 4th or 5th, they were alone in first. Then once they fell out, they didn't stop. So, it's first year for the owner. They had like 3 general managers, literally 3 general managers, because the first one got fired for sending sexually suggestive pictures to a reporter. Something that was found out earlier in, I think, 2016. Then the second one was busted for DUI, and so Sandy Alderson ends the year as a temporary. So they had a lot going on. And then for a long time after the season, they didn't have a GM, they didn't have a manager.
Right.
They were like the Dumb and Dumber line. We got no job, we got no food, our pets' heads are falling off. Then it went burst.
Right.
What happened since then is like, what would happen if it was like a parallel universe? We got pets' heads, we got food. Yeah. In the span like 3 weeks, they signed Billy Uppier, and they got Max Scherzer, and they hired Buck Showalter. So yeah, so they're ready to go. That division, it's got the defending champions, the Braves, but no one else is really. The Phillies kind of like they've been trying to water, even though they got a win now roster, manager, and GM. The Nationals have totally rebuilt. Kind of similar, I guess, to some degree to what you're seeing in Chicago, a team that just won it, but Washington was a lot older. That wasn't a young core. Those guys, except for Juan Soto and then Trey Turner, who they shouldn't have traded. But that was a team with a lot of veterans, and they kind of maxed out in 19. Good for them, they won. Mm-hmm. And the Marlins are the Marlins, so forget the Marlins. But so the Mets have a shot, really, especially what's going to probably be an expanded playoff field, to get in and make some noise. So yeah, so the fan base is excited out here. Now it's just a matter of, can you play? And like you said, for the Cubs, man, and they started out pretty good last year, right? They were in first place for a while.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, and the House of Cards just got. won the division in 20. But as we all know, once 60-game season is not a real season. So once
Yeah. What happened, if I recall correctly, with the Cubs was they were in first place, and then they began this West Coast swing that also culminated in like a 6-20 stretch.
Oh yeah, the awful month. Yeah.
And then they were just toast.
Yep.
And I believe the signs were starting to be there that if there was any crack in the facade, that they were just going to let these guys walk. Now, the rumor that was making the rounds yesterday was that the Cubs are interested, if Rizzo is interested, in a 2-year deal.
I saw that. But don't trade him. Jeez.
Yeah.
You know?
And we knew that this sort of thing would be a possibility, but now you run the risk of how jilted does a guy like that feel,
right,
when they were gonna put a statue of him up, and then they send him to the Yankees. They bring him back. Is it sort of like, it could be a little bit like Greg Maddox's return, where he started the end of his career in Chicago, and ownership was at the time saying, "Oh, you were always a Cub and always." And no,
I won a championship and 18 Cy Youngs and
this was kind of a big loss when he left.
Right.
So it's puzzling, but I guess, if I put myself in the shoes of the average fan in any place that isn't New York, where they're spending, or Dodgers, they're spending, and maybe Tampa Bay, where they're not necessarily spending, but they're going to find a way to win.
Whatever they do is going to work out.
Exactly. So everywhere else, you kind of got this like deer in the headlights look of, okay, do I really support this team?
I invest myself in this. Yeah.
It's
I'm sorry, go on.
Well, what I was going to say is how do you as just an average fan reconcile that with the fact that you're given the impression by a good chunk of ownership that they don't care?
And generally speaking, and this may be different this time, I don't know. Generally speaking, public sides with management in these disputes, and they really shouldn't, because the owners don't have a finite amount of time to apply their trade, and they're going to make money this year no matter what, or save money this year no matter what, and it comes back to, some people think there should be a salary cap. I'm a big anti-cap guy. I'd never get how people who made their fortunes and as genius capitalists now need a limit on spending, right? I mean, come on, what have we told the Ricketts family if you try to tell them you can only spend X amount or make X amount, right? So, but, in the other leagues, there's a perception of more competitiveness, more parity, because all those leagues have caps. But now look at the NFL. If you don't have a stud quarterback, go home. I mean, out here, we have the Jets and Giants out here, and the Jets, like, my God, you're now looking at a 15-year period in that conference at Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Boy, Zach Wilson better be it. Otherwise, you're just looking at, it's going to be 65 years without championship before you know it. NBA, it's the Lakers, it's the Spurs. It started, who won last year? Milwaukee won, but they got Giannis, who's a superstar. If you don't have an absolute Titanic superstar, Toronto, Kawhi Leonard a couple years ago, the Lakers with LeBron, and NHL is definitely the wild card, where if you root for a team, you feel like you got a shot, because as long as you get into the tournament, we saw a couple years ago, Columbus or Tampa Bay went like 80-2, and Columbus beat them 4, right? Out here, I cover the Islanders, and like the last 2 years, it's not going to happen this year probably, but the last 2 years, they squeaked in. Last year they were pretty good, but the year before they squeaked into the out bracket because of the pandemic, and they made the semifinals and came within a goal last year, probably win the whole damn thing, because they would have smoked Montreal in the finals. So there's perception in baseball that it's the haves and the have-nots. But you know the last time a baseball team repeated as champion, right? You have a book about it in your library somewhere.
Oh, yeah,
No one's done it since the Yankees.
Yeah, the
Yankees
Yankees.
repeat. The Dodgers spend more money than God, and they've won one championship in since 1988. The Yankees haven't won since '09. So there's a real case to be made that baseball, for as flawed as things are, is a system where you've got a shot. Let me just call it baseball reference for a second. You got a shot where your team's going to be competitive more often than not. I mean, look in Tampa Bay, they don't spend a lot of money, but they're really good. I'm just looking at the standings. It feels like every team outside Seattle, Miami, and that's it. Has made the playoffs. And San Diego make the playoffs? Yeah, San Diego made the playoffs in the lockout in the pandemic year. So there's a good amount of the teams have chances there, and MLB isn't doing a great job of conveying that, I don't think. And when the bulk of the wintertime or fall time spending is done by a handful of teams, it makes everybody feel like we're, if I'm a fan of that team, we're just sitting it out. And one of those teams is the Yankees. They haven't done anything this winter. And the question is, if this ever ends, are they going to get Freddie Freeman? Are they going to get Matt Olson? Are they going to settle, are they going to sign Trevor Story or Carlos Correa? Are they going to, get a stopgap guy until one of their prospects comes up? So it's just a strange dynamic, because baseball is not as lopsided as it is perceived to be, but there seems to be a segment of owners who don't mind amplifying that message. So I've rambled again. I apologize. But yeah, the original point, there are fans who feel like their team's not doing anything because their team's not doing anything, even though they're in a sport where the winning, for lack of a better term, the competitiveness, competing for a championship, is more spread out than anywhere except hockey. So their messaging is awful. It is what it is, and the perception they present is awful. And we'll see. Hopefully, this gets settled at some point. We'll see if things change then. We'll see. I know the players, as we were talking about, are tired of the tanking, and there's a lot of it going on because it worked for Houston. I often wonder, we may have talked about this offline, I often wonder if Houston doesn't beat who they beat. They beat LA for the championship, right?
Right.
17. Yeah, if Houston doesn't bang those cans, and if LA wins in 7 instead of loses in 7, how does that change the perception of tanking? The Cubs tanked. Okay, so you go Cubs, Astros, and even to some degree the Royals in 15. The Royals 15, 16, 17, you had champions who bottomed out. Now the Royals have always been small, kind of thrifty, so I don't really look at them as tanking like Chicago did when Theo got there. You guys tore it down and stunk for a couple of years, right? And then Houston took it to another level. Now look, you're looking at Baltimore. For Baltimore's records the last 3 full seasons. You ready for this? Last year, 52 and 110. 19, 54 and 108. 18, 47 and 115. Where the hell is the lightning in the tunnel? We're not on the horizon yet of this, are we?
Right.
Where's your rebuild gonna end?
and Baltimore is how many years removed from playing for the playing in the league championship series?
Baltimore's best team since '83 was the 14 team.
Yeah,
that I think had the best record in the league. They swept Detroit. Detroit starters in the first round. I'm not sure the order. I think it went Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Rick Porcello. Cy Young winners. David Price started one of the games, and Rick Porcello didn't. I think was it. 4 Cy Young winners, and Baltimore swept them. And that's where I think we all thought. Finally, Buck Showalter, the new Mets manager, who's just been the master of awful timing. He gets let go of the Yankees 1 year before they win. Arizona, Texas went on to make the World Series, I think twice after he left. Looked like that was his year finally. And then Kansas City, as we remember, won that amazing wild card game against Oakland and just didn't stop losing until the World Series. So Baltimore ran into that buzzsaw. And then 2 years later, they made the playoffs, and Buck left Zach Britton in the bullpen. Ubaldo Jimenez gave up the walk-off to Edwin Encarnacion. And you know, the Orioles, I mean, what for at one point last year, they had nobody signed for this year. Nobody. They had no free, no older guys on the contract. And, you know, they had a Cedric Mullins type who's been great. Of course, they're going to keep him, but they had no contractual obligations beyond, you know, arbitration, all that. It's like, you know, it's an awful look for the game. You've got teams doing that. Let's see who else. I mean, you know, Baltimore, like Baltimore, Texas has kind of torn it down, but you know, they were good for a while, so you kind of get that. Pittsburgh, you know, Pittsburgh, we've you know, they were made the edge of the World Series with all those Leland teams, couldn't get through. Then they were terrible for a generation, had a few good years of McCutcheon, and now they're back to 100 losses. Arizona, well, Arizona just, it all fell apart last year for them, so I don't really count them as a tanker. But like, you know, it's bad for the sport when teams just aren't trying. There's no reason to lose 100 games in a row, 100 games a year for 3 straight years like that.
So, dog stuff behind us.
Mm-hmm.
We're thinking about whether or not there's going to be baseball, and you think that there's a good chance, but it might be an abbreviated season this year. Can we talk a little bit about hockey?
Sure.
And is there a renaissance with the Islanders, and is there a renaissance with hockey in general?
Like we talked about to start the show, you know, when you have ESPN in your corner, you're going to get more pub. I mean, we can argue all day long, or probably agree all day long, if it's good or bad that a network can kind of lift, or I don't want to say sink, because the NHL is okay, but can, you know, single-handedly raise its profile. And I gotta tell you, they've done a good job with it. Are you a hockey guy? Are you a Blackhawks guy or casual guy?
Well, it's been difficult around here. I mean, hockey was my fifth of the 4 major sports growing up, and I really was not all that interested. But I've been in Chicago since '93, so you kind of do the bandwagon thing. But now with
especially when they got good,
yeah, well, they got good, but now the revelations of kind of a tainted title in 2010, and then last week Rocky Wirtz hosting an event and kind of going off at a reporter asking a question. That's not a good look for the team as they try to bounce back. And what's really fascinating to me has been the kind of how it there was such a I had a friend who covered hockey at the college level, who told me that one of the folks that he knew had all of this inside information. He says, you watch, if and when the elder Wirtz passes away, this thing will be, the groundswell will be unbelievable, and it's going to be like out of nowhere that you're going to see all of these. Well, and there were dormant Blackhawks fans who were like, I'm not giving Bill Wirtz any of my money.
Yeah.
And this was a guy who had done everything possible to alienate a fan base.
Yep.
Pay-per-view television was one of the most interesting ones. So, and then once that happened, that began the comeback. But now seeing how they were, and especially the fallout from this. I mean, Joel Quenneville was out of his job.
A great coach. Yep.
Yeah, with the Panthers.
Yeah.
The day after this came to light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a fascinating case study. But it could not have happened, I think, at a worse time for the Blackhawks, because they have not been any good the last couple of years. And that's been that kind of, I mean, a lot of the fan base, you know, with the Cubs, you had 16, and no matter how bad everything got, it's like, wow, you know, at least won a World Series in my lifetime. Yeah.
Exactly how you felt that night. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And with the Blackhawks, you've got 3 of those Stanley Cup titles sort of in a row. And now they're like, well, you know, I've kind of,
they stink, they're irrelevant, and you're mad at them for
yeah. So I'm not sure.
Behavior.
I'm not sure how this team
Bounces
comes back to relevance
Mhm.
again, and this time, you know, whether or not they quote unquote mean it will stick around, because it does not look like there were really any. It doesn't look like the kinds of changes that you would have wanted to see
No,
have actually happened.
not yet.
No.
Definitely not yet. No. So, but look at, I mean, for better or mostly worse, what's the expression? Winning is the best deodorant.
Yes.
They make a cup run. People are going to be back in what's the United Center out
Yeah,
there?
United
I was
Center.
thinking Chicago Stadium.
Yeah.
And look at it's terrible. But generally speaking, not exclusively, but generally speaking, people, it's a very tribal thing. And if their team is winning with a bad guy or bad guys playing it, running it, okay.
Well, and what's also interesting is this rationalization that people can do. And there was a little bit of this going on with Aroldis Chapman during the Cubs run, because
out here too.
that, I mean, how do we say this delicately without casting dispersions? He's probably not a good guy. And at what point you're like, well, okay, I mean, but is he changed? But now he's on our side. So how do we approach this?
And then you have the Addison Russell thing that broke a few years after they won the championship.
Exactly.
That was really bad.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a certain level of cringe.
It's tough. It's tough to be having the conversation with a good friend of mine whose kids are all teenagers now, and I think his oldest son's favorite football team is the Steelers. And so I was talking to my buddy after that great Sunday night game where the Chargers and Raiders almost tied to knock Pittsburgh out. And my buddy's like, oh, my son, you know, is a big Steelers fan, and I was happy for him, but kind of wanted Ben to go out like that. And then we got into this talk about, you know, it's tough, you know, and his son apparently is very conscientious and you know, doesn't like to root for bad guys, but the Ben stuff happened so long ago. He's done such a good job of rebranding himself as a good Christian and all that nonsense. When we all know, you know, like you and I remember the stories, you know, that's not good Christian. you can't cover that up.
But in his defense, you can be a good Christian and be forgiven.
True.
For what
happened.
Deeper. So in his heart, as he's presenting himself, he's been forgiven, and he's come to Jesus, and he's moved forward.
Married with kids.
Yeah. So, and I think people can be receptive to that. And I guess, you know, to bring this back full circle to the discussion of the Blackhawks, I'm not sure that, I mean, I think the Blackhawks had their come to Jesus moment, to use air quotes, with the assaults and the public shaming.
Right. Reckoning.
And I'm not sure that there has been a comeuppance. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure that they have asked for forgiveness from the fan base. And right now, I don't know if the fan base is ready to forgive them.
Yeah.
So,
and how much of that too is they're not very good at the moment. If they're in second place in the Central, right?
You get back in the playoff run, we'll consider forgiving you. Right. But for now, it's
you're not very good, and you're run by bad people, so we don't like you. Yeah.
So we were talking about hockey before my dog interrupted us. So let's talk a little bit more about hockey. Is there a chance of a three-peat in Tampa Bay?
Sure. I mean, Yeah, I mean they're right in the thick of things right now. Hockey. Again, we go back to about parity and whatnot. There's a bunch of teams that look like they could win the championship. Tampa, Carolina, Toronto should be a heck of a story. The Rangers have arrived again. Vegas, from day one, has been great. Colorado looks unbeatable. Minnesota's, I think, had just had a 12 or 13 game unbeaten streak, or at least over to regulation point streaks, right? Point streak. My guess is just no, because look, it hasn't happened in 30, almost 40 years since the Islanders did it. And those, and what Tampa did, I think, and I don't know if it gets enough credit. They won back-to-back championships in 11 months. I'm sorry, 9 months.
Yeah.
They closed out the who they beat in the championship in the 20. I'm blanking here. They won in 2020 in September, and then they won the championship in they beat Montreal in July. They beat Dallas in 20. I'm sorry, they beat Dallas.
Right.
So they've won 2 championships in 10 months. At the end of, with a pandemic in the middle, and it's just, I think to me, it's one of the most remarkable feats that we've seen as sports fans. And because it's hockey, it's like you said, it's the fourth sport. I don't know if it gets the attention and the recognition it should get. A three-peat would do it. My guess is just talking out loud. I think someone else wins it because no one's done a three-peat against the Islanders in the 80s, and the wear and tear the Lightning absorbed the last 2 years. I think come playoff time it'll catch up to them, but there's certainly a championship medal to them. That is to be the champion, you got to knock him or her out. And talking about the wear and tear, we're seeing it locally with the Islanders because they went to Game 6 against Tampa in the semis in 20, Game 7 last year, and they can't get. And part of it, they had to start the season with a 13-game road trip because their new arena was getting finished. And they got a COVID outbreak at the end of that trip, and they lost 11 games in a row, and that's a hard road to hoe when you've gone a month without winning. And they just had their optimal lineup fielded or iced. You probably put the term for hockey on the ice for the first time last week since opening week. Opening weeks, they had a Ryan Pulak, the defenseman, was back after suffering an injury, and everyone, knock on wood, is healthy. But they're 17 points back, and that's a long lot of ground to make up. Doubly so when you had you spent the last 2 years playing hockey into September and July, or actually June for them. So right. My guess is that someone will clip the Lightning, just for a purely theatrical story point of view. Toronto winning it would be an amazing story, because as we all know, they've gone 50 odd years without winning it. The original 6 franchise. They find new ways to lose in the playoffs every year, up 3 games to 1 or 3 games to none. Out here, the Island fans are still furious that John Tavares left, but he's a Toronto kid. And if you're, I remember saying to someone, you'll appreciate this, this would have been, if they win Cup with Tavares, the hometown kid's captain, it'd be an even better story than if the Cleveland Browns won it with Bernie Kosar. Remember Bernie, the Cleveland kid?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can you pass it up, right?
Right.
You had a chance to win the Cup in your hometown and end the drought. Yep. I know. I'd said if Bernie Kosar came out of retirement at 58 and won the Lombardi Trophy. So my guess is someone knocks off Tampa. Who that is, I don't know. I mean, there's 6 or 7 teams that look like legit Cup contenders, and only Stanley Cup playoffs. You gotta be good, you gotta get lucky, and you gotta be healthy. Barry Trotz, Islanders coach, talks about puck luck and the unseen hand of fate, he says. And a few years ago against Carolina, they're 0-0 in Game 1 of the conference semifinals, and Carolina, I think it's Jordan Stahl, puck near the net, bounces off Robin Leonard's skating in overtime for what amounts to an own goal. Carolina wins the series 4-0. If the Islanders win Game 1 there, who knows, right? So you got things that go your way. You got to be healthy, and I think it's someone else's turn. But hey, I could be wrong. I sure could be wrong in there.
So your other passion is college basketball, and specifically Hofstra basketball. So you brought a prop.
2000 tournament up in Buffalo. Hofstra played, as I call it, Robert Ventura University, Oklahoma State. So they're getting these out in the hotel. I took like 30 of them, and about 28 of them are at my dad's house in Connecticut.
There you go.
He means to hang that up. So yeah. So yeah. I mean, go back to we've got a fewer weeks of college basketball than the March Madness, of people not realizing baseball's not here. So
Right.
get it together.
So can Hofstra make it to the tournament in a year when there's actually a tournament?
Jeez, man. Part of me, doesn't want them to win because I don't want the world to stop again,
Right.
And maybe it's just not meant to be. It's funny, we just mentioned the hockey, the Stanley Cup. I've come to think that a mid-major conference tournament is like the Stanley Cup. You got to be hot at the right time. You got to have some things go your way, and you got to be healthy. 2 years ago, when Hofstra won, they won the championship game over Northeastern, whose best player was, I think, was an ankle, no, shoulder, really banged up, really nowhere near himself. Played 15, 20 minutes, got hurt a couple times. Tyson Walker, he's now at Michigan State, and he played for Northeastern last year, and they went like 8-1 in league. And there's a stat in Ken Palm that had, I can't remember how he measured it, and I couldn't tell you how to find it, but I know I read it, that he'd figured out that he had the most impact on his team of any player in the country. And this year, Northeastern is 1-11 in the league, or 1-10. And he went to Michigan State. So, but anyway, if he's healthy in 2020, I don't think Hofstra wins, and you're still staring at this long title drought. But the CAA this year, I won't bore your non-CAA listeners too much, but it's a really deep league, and Northeastern just earned its first win against Towson, which had 2 league losses. So it's kind of really balanced, really deep parity. The number 1 team at the moment was North Carolina Wilmington was picked 9th to start the year. And Hofstra's 3rd by half a game. There's like 4 or 5 teams that have a real shot to win it, and no one would be surprised if someone else in the back end made a run. So I'll tell you in a month from today, I'll know. The tournament's 4 weeks, finale's 4 weeks, scheduled 4 weeks from yesterday. So.
And where are they holding the tournament?
Washington, D.C.
Okay, same place it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, the Wizards practice facility and the Mystics home arena. They're rebuilding up the whole area of that area of D.C. And I was telling someone the other day, they're talking about hotels and restaurants. Well, that all came to a stop. So I don't know. We're hoping we can go. I don't know how it is developed down there, but then one more year there, and then we're hoping it comes up here because the contract is up, and the league just expanded to northern-based schools, Monmouth in New Jersey and Stony Brook, the other Division I program in Long Island. So we're kind of hoping that ends up at Nassau Coliseum, which has nothing else to host. Now the Islanders are gone, so we'll see. We'll see in a couple of years.
And there are departures from the CAA too, correct?
James Madison, based Harrisonburg, Virginia. 4th president was Madison, right? Our 4th president. Yeah,
sounds about right. Yeah,
James Monroe and James Madison. I think Madison was 4, Monroe was 5th, and Quincy Adams, the first dynasty of American politics, was 6th. Right? We're getting deep now, folks. Showing off our 12th grade history knowledge. Madison went to the Sun Belt, which geography tells you Harrisonburg is not in the Sun Belt, but hey,
but
this wasn't East Coast either, was it, Dave?
No, it was not. It was not. But this is a football driven move, correct? Because they're going 1 up.
Yeah, 1A/FBS. I would say call it 1A. And there's and I know we've talked about this. There's a real the CAA has a long-standing bylaw that if a school announces mid-year it is exiting the league, it is ineligible for the conference championships, which I think is a terrible rule, and most people agree is a terrible rule, because these kids, these student athletes only have a finite amount of chances to compete for championships.
Right.
So but Madison has kind of been telegraphing this, and one can say they've been honest and transparent. One side says, well, they've kind of been taunting the league, saying, oh, look, we're really thinking about one day FBS football and upgrading and where we fit in. Long story short is, they couldn't time it so they could leave the league in April, May, or June and just jump straight to the Sun Belt, because with football, you got to make a schedule up, and it's a lot harder than making up a basketball or soccer and the other schedule. So they announced a few months ago they're going to the Sun Belt, and immediately the league said, okay, you're not playing. They issued an appeal. The league turned it down. And I don't know if you saw yesterday, but there was their head coach of men's basketball was saying he thinks that they're not getting calls because they're leaving the league. And last year they were the victim of a really bad, he being Mark Byington, the coach, was victim of a really bad technical that shouldn't have been a technical in the late stages of their quarterfinal game, and they lost it as the 1 seed. So it's been an imperfect storm of elements. And if you get rid of this bylaw, then all this is avoidable. Madison's leaving. Maybe nobody wants them to win, but they're eligible to participate. And the fans, the student athletes, aren't furious at the league. So, yeah, so Madison's leaving, which drops CA to 9, and then they added Monmouth, Hampton, and Virginia, and Stony Brook to make it 12. And I'm hearing that they might want to go to 14, which to me is crazy high. Especially in a league where most of your focus is on the NCAA tournament, men's basketball. In the CAA, since it went to 9 or 10 teams in 2014, every team except Madison and Towson has played for the championship. That's a pretty good ratio, right? We talk about back to, you want your team to feel like has a shot. Every team but 2 has played for the championship for the last that'd be 8 years. So, and Towson looks really good this year. Towson might break that streak and get in the championship game. So, yes, the CA is going to 12 at least. And I wonder, this is just me talking out loud, I wonder if the NCAA tournament is going to go to 96, because a lot of mid-major leagues are going. The WAC with Chicago State was at the 14 this year or something, 13, something crazy number. And a lot
That's
of a lot, yeah. Big South went to 12 this year. A lot of leagues are at the 12, and makes 12 to 14. It makes me wonder. I think part of it is that they're adding schools to protect themselves when others leave. So the ECC, if you're at 8 and 2 leave, you're in a lot of trouble. If you're at 12 and 2 leave, okay, you can kind of like get your bearings for a little bit and maybe go back up. So I wonder if the NCAA is going on that 96 format we heard about a few years ago. 64 is the perfect bracketed, right? You picture it, it's easily bracketable, and but 96, I'm sure the networks carried it, would have minded more inventory, right? So.
Yeah, the flip side of that, though, if I recall correctly, I thought that they launched that trial balloon where they kind of leaked the story. Hey, we're thinking about
they leaked the bracket, right? They leaked the bracket.
Maybe. And then the reaction was like, oh, no, you can't mess with this. But again, with the pandemic giving you opportunities to try different things in sports, baseball had put the runner on second thing, and now that's permanent.
Yeah.
And it could be that basketball, you're like, well, we had to be nimble. Yeah, we had to be nimble, and so maybe we got to be nimble again. And we took these opportunities away from the student athletes, right. So now we need to create more opportunities for the student athletes. I
just wonder if they're thinking that, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to me to go to 14, 12, 14, even 16 team mid majors with one bid. And you're playing the lottery. That's no fun.
Yeah, that's a question, and I guess and you do wonder also how much football factors into any of these. Yep. I mean, it obviously factored into James Madison's decision to leave. Yep. But and if you've got a number of these schools that have to do the North Dakota State question, which is
right. Do you stay in FCS
and dominate? We leave and try our luck.
Playing the Bahamas Bowl, right?
Yeah. Do we become the next Appalachian State? Yeah. So lots of questions around that. What surprises nationally? I mean, we've got Auburn just lost last night. It's the number 1 team. Gonzaga's up there. Purdue is 3rd. What surprises might we see either from the mid majors or from somebody in a major conference that is sort of on the outskirts right now? What surprises do you think we'll see?
I'd like to point out, first of all, drag up Ken Palm here. I'd like to point out that Hofstra should be the number 1 team in the country next week, because Auburn lost to Arkansas, which lost to Hofstra.
Yeah.
Don't look at me. Don't blame me.
No,
I didn't invent the transitive property. Yep. I didn't invent it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just a sports writer.
Yeah, but then what happens when Hofstra loses to?
Well, they're not losing. No. Next week, the season is over. The regular season is over, and Hofstra's the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And they play a 16 seed, out from the out bracket.
Yeah.
That's it. The season's over right now. I shouldn't say that's a joke. It's joking.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So, but surprises.
I don't know. I mean, like, Purdue, I was looking at, oh yeah, Purdue's defense, looking at it right now. I think I read something, you know, they're allowing in 99.4 points per 100 possessions for Ken Palm, which I'd read somewhere would be the highest figure allowed by a champion, maybe even a Final Four team in the Ken Palm era, which goes back to 02. So I don't, Purdue, you know, like I spend most of my time watching CAA, but you know, Purdue to me feels like a kind of like a first weekend stunner, maybe not 16-1 or 15-2, but you know, that second round, you know, that always seemed to get Bill Self before they finally won it all in 08, or DePaul back in the day, right?
Yeah.
You know, Texas, Chris Beard is, you know, he was a few years ago, he was at, I'll tell you in a second, he was at, I think, Arkansas. Yeah, Arkansas. He went from Arkansas, Little Rock in the Sun Belt, and all ties together.
Right.
I won a championship there, got to the second round, went to Texas Tech, which almost won national, came with a minute of a national championship. Texas friggin' Tech, right?
Texas Tech, exactly. Yeah.
And they jumped to Texas in the conference, which is a very unusual, you know, you don't usually see power conference moves like that. So I think Texas with him has a real shot, and they're ranked 14th on Ken Palm, has a real shot to make some noise, you know, make a big run. You know, Alabama was ranked high to start the year. They've kind of slipped a little bit. Same thing with LSU. I just want to see Duke lose. That's all I want to see.
I was going to ask about whether we'll see a
Coach K goes out a loser. I'm okay with that.
And the last time that happened, where the coach was, it was his swan song and he won a title, was Al McGuire, correct?
Okay, yeah, that'd be right.
77.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody else. It has to be it, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Great pull, yeah.
And then before that was
Wooden, right?
Wooden, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there was anybody else in there that said, you know, this is it, and won on the way out.
Yeah. Was Al retiring at the end of that year? Did he announce that?
He had already announced it.
Okay.
And I think it's interesting because the original plan was, he just said, I'm done coaching. This will be my last year. And the original plan, he was going to be the president of something. It was something like Spalding Sporting Goods.
Mm-hmm.
And the powers that be at NBC were like, you know, I think there's something else for you. And
thank goodness for us. He was great.
Yeah. He was one of a kind, and yeah.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I was just saying, in terms of the national picture, like I said, you know, it's just Gonzaga finally wins it. I don't know. My guess is, you know, I look, don't have a bracket obviously, but you know, I'd love, you know, Auburn or Texas to me kind of strike me as the, you know, teams with the coaches who can turn water into wine and all that, with Bruce Pearl and Auburn. They lost last night, but and of course Hofstra, you know, your Final 14, your surprise Final 14 will be Hofstra, which sneaks in as a 14 seed and
right, pulls a first round upset.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Get you know, people are saying, and I don't think they were just, you know, saying to make us feel better. I thought Hofstra could have won a couple games in 20. You know, they had senior guards, a well-coached team, a great zone defense, as you'll know from, you know, Joe Mahalik loves the Jim Boeheim zone, and they played it perfectly. And they allowed 41, 61, and 61 points in the tournament run. And that's a team. They had a 50. They had at the time the program's longest tenured player, the Sherboui, played 141 games because he had suffered an injury as a sophomore, just in time to get a red shirt. They had another fourth year guard, Eli Pemberton, who's playing in the G League. They had a pretty good big. They had, you know, 2 experienced wings. So yeah, people were like, you know, they could have won a game or two, and they really could have. It wasn't just, you know, bluster. You get a good draw, you get a team, you know, you catch a team off guard a little bit. But hopefully this year we'll see.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to throw out other than plugging the book again, which we'll put a link down on the.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah, I said
YouTube.
Third book came out in April 2020, which was not the best time for a book to come out. The Subway Series. For a little while there, I thought, you know, in the 60-game season, you think maybe they'll end up playing each other in the World Series with the quirkiness, but you know, Mets ended up finishing in last place. Yeah, that was I came out in April 2020 and enjoyed writing that. And I guess my last thought is I guess we'll tie back to the baseball. I think it'll come back around. I think we'll have it. I just don't know in what form. or how many games. And, I think the players want to negotiate and they want concessions, and which they should. That this negotiation, right? Like I was talking to my dad about something, and it just, negotiations came up, and it's like, look, if a negotiation goes the right way, no one's 100% happy, right? You didn't get everything you wanted, they didn't get everything they wanted, but you got something. And I think we're in a polarizing time where everybody needs to feel like they won and stomped on the other person's throat. If it stays that way, it's gonna be a while before we get baseball. I hope, like I said, I hoped a few weeks ago that the popularity, the football just dominating the headlines and nobody giving a crap about baseball would wake people up, and it doesn't seem to have done it yet. So let's talk the Bengals, Dave. One real quick, Bengals. Let's talk the Bengals. How'd you become a Bengals fan?
I grew up in pre-Colts, Indiana. So we had the Bears on one channel and we had the Bengals on the other channel. Yeah. So, and that was I was never really cared much for the Bears. So I was a Bengals fan. So I lived through 2 Super Bowls. And
I thought it was a constitutional amendment that they had to play the 49ers, but apparently not, right?
I guess, yeah, I guess not. I think a win over the Rams would look better, I think, on who cares? I mean, either way,
right?
But yeah, exactly. I think the Rams appear to be a really good team. Yeah. So, and it would be nice to win a Super Bowl beating a really good team.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to win a Super Bowl.
Period.
So I'm still, it's still one of those, wait, this is happening sort of
4 days,
moments.
right? Yeah, 4 days from now.
Yeah, and I was talking to friends earlier, it is the perfect storm for tickets, because on the one side you've got an LA team with a fan base that is getting used once again to having an LA team and rooting for them. And then you've got the other side where a team hasn't been to a Super Bowl in 33 years. Crazy. So I feel bad for anybody sitting in Cincinnati who had set aside money for this, or like, when the Eagles went ages ago and people were mortgaging their houses, because it's not, not a pretty sight. I mean, 5,000 to get in the door was the thing the other day. I have a friend who goes to Super Bowl often, and his strategy has always been wait till the kickoff and then see what the scalpers are selling the tickets for.
Really?
And
the scalpers outside the Super Bowl?
Wow,
yeah. Really?
Yeah.
And cash on hand.
Yeah, and he's used that strategy before. He says that he thinks by kickoff it'll be $3,000. I don't know if it's going to go that low, but it
is a perfect storm, like you said, because it's a new stadium, right? And people, even if you don't like the Rams or the Bengals, you want to see, and if you have the money to burn, you want to see SoFi.
Well, I mean, if your fan base, I mean, you look at all the luminaries who were there for the NFC Championship game. I mean, you got guys like Rob Lowe you got Leo in the house.
Yeah, Rob Lowe starring 911 on Fox.
Right, exactly.
Magic Lone Star.
Yeah, Magic Johnson posing with the governor and the mayor and all that. I mean, it's just, it's. But I'm of course looking forward to the game, and what my plan as a Bengals fan is to catch up on all the commercials this week.
Afterward. Oh, are you gonna watch them beforehand?
Watch them all beforehand, and then I don't have to worry about, this is the ad. No, so, okay, that's when I
go to the bathroom, throw up, right?
Go to the bathroom, throw up, get the Alka-Seltzer ready, or what have you. So,
well, I'm rooting for the Bengals because, like my dad always says, he likes to see new teams win it. But as you know, I'm an Evan McPherson stan, because I took him in a fantasy league, and like that, he had that great weekend, week 15 or 16, whatever it was, our last week of the regular season. He kicked like 3 50-yard field goals and got me into the playoffs. And then I rolled the next 2 weeks with a terrible team, so I won it. So as a gag gift for myself, I rarely win fantasy football. I bought the shirt for like $30. Yeah, like what the heck? Retreat myself. And then like I wore it as a gag again for week 1 against Las Vegas, and they won. So I wore it again the next week, and they won. Then the championship game, I went sledding with my daughter, and I was telling a buddy, another friend of mine who's a Bengal fan. I said, shout out to Andrew Wagner from Milwaukee, who's I don't know why he's a Bengal fan, but he is. But he was tweeting about it. I'm like, listen, I'm out with Molly. Let me know what happens. He's like, it's going bad. It's going bad. We get home, it was 24-3, was it? 21-3?
21-3, yeah.
It's a gag. I go, all right, I put the shirt on. And then,
There you go.
and then they came back and won. So, I was a Buccaneer fan for a long time. And then we talk about, justification. Jameis Winston, is hard to root for them, given what transpired at college, and Brady and Brown. So I'll be happy to root for the Bengals this week and maybe, take shoulder their history. I've been waiting for this forever too. I guess I technically have. None of us have seen the Bengals championship. So I guess I technically have waited my entire life for this moment, for a potential Evan McPherson. They're going to win at the gun, right? If they win, it'll be McPherson from like 57 yards at the gun.
That's pretty much what I think. It's everybody's like, yeah, okay, I mean, or it's what's weird to me. I'd heard an adage ages ago about when you hear the spread come out, you're supposed to think, okay,
right?
Is this spread right? And if it's wrong, you go with the team in whose direction it was wrong. I was actually thinking the spread was going to be more like 7. So, but
the Rams only had one more win than the Bengals during the regular season, I think. Bengals were 12.
Yeah, 11 and
12. Bengals are 10, maybe 2 wins.
Two more wins. Yeah, but
the
still
Rams
the 4
were low
seed.
seeded. The Rams were a 4 seed or a 5 seed or something.
Both teams were 4 seeds.
Yeah, it's as balanced, I think, as Super Bowls as we've seen a long time. There's obviously neither team's won it in this incarnation.
Right.
It's not like you're watching, Brady going for championship number 17,000 against Mahomes. I mean,
right.
2 championship winning quarterbacks was last year. Year before, I guess year before was different because Mahomes, Kansas City had never won, or at least hadn't won with Mahomes. San Fran hadn't won since the young Montana. So I guess, but this is different. It's 2 totally untested quarterbacks, not untested, but quarterbacks we hadn't seen as elite until this year. Burrow didn't have the time yet, and Stafford was in Detroit. You always wondered, how much of that, was he a great quarterback who would get you so far, or was he a good quarterback who would get you only so far? Or was he a great quarterback stuck in Detroit? I guess now we know the answer, right?
Yeah, and the funny stat I saw was both were number 1 picks.
Yeah.
One is making it in the Super Bowl in its 13th season. The other's making it in the Super Bowl in his 2nd.
Yeah.
So
right, Burrow was hurt last year, right? This is only Burrow's 2nd year, right? Crazy.
This is his 2nd year. Yeah, went down in week 12 or 13 with a MCL strain. Had to have a bunch of knee surgeries. So
the thing that's interesting to me about the Bengals is that, to me, and I said this, I think even in December, I didn't really believe it that would happen. Like sometimes the most dangerous team is the team that gets there a year early. Bengals, they're building, they're like, all right, they're pretty good this year. But they go 10-7. That's pretty good. They got a great quarterback. Chase is fun. Mixon's pretty good, blah, 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 blah. But then come on, the Bengals, it's early. The Mahomes, Allen, and this is Allen's year, right? After coming to the championship game, conference finals last year. But teams that don't know any better, sometimes the ones that do it, like the Patriots in 01, 02 Super Bowl, they were 0-2, and who's this Brady kid? And then they won the whole thing. I mean, I'm sure I'll go back to other teams that have done that.
The other eerie parallel between those 2 teams is, I don't know which season it was of Brady's, for 2nd or 3rd, I'm not sure, don't totally recall. But remember they had the tuck rule.
Yeah, 01.
In their first playoff game.
Yep.
The Bengals had that weird whistle.
Oh, that's right.
That was not the correct implementation of whatever rule, but also was the whistle shouldn't have been blown, and it's a non-reviewable call, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So you had the eerie call in the first playoff win with the young quarterback.
Yeah. And
they'll play in a dome stadium against
the Rams.
Oh. Yeah.
Where's Rod Serling in the 20?
Yeah, exactly. On that note, my friend,
Like you were saying, real quick, you're saying in 15 years, Burrow will be retiring off his 8th championship, right? And
Right.
playing on Mars or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
The London Silly Nannies on
Yes,
Mars.
we did throw those back and forth on Twitter. I mean, the fear is that this is the latest Super Bowl that they've ever had, but given a couple years, we're going to add a 19th and a 20th regular season game. There'll be no preseason. You'll go into March, and it's going to be a dog's breakfast.
You'll go from the Super Bowl end on like April 20th, and the draft will be the next day at that site.
Right. Yeah, that's the easiest way.
Again. Tune in tomorrow when they pick 32nd or 42nd, whatever the number of teams they have at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's fun.
And we'll put a link down there and on the subscribe button, all those fun things.
Smash that button.
Yeah,
and I wish I'd brought my McPherson shirt out of the bedroom. I didn't, but I have it, and it'll be worn on Sunday afternoon and evening. And I hope your team wins. And thanks for having me on. Always fun chatting with you. And let's hope we have baseball soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, my friend. We'll do it again soon.
Take care, everybody. Be good.
All right. Cheers, man.